Janelle Marks, how's it going?
It's going well. I'm really, really thrilled to be here. Ever since I met you, for those who are watching, I'm meeting Mikey through Cliff Wilson. And as soon as I met him, I was like, I've got to know more about this guy. It's just the group in general.
I
There's so
I
many good
appreciate
people.
that.
Yeah, I was very intrigued right off the bat. And so I feel like this has organically happened and I'm excited about it.
It is, and I feel like the best like connections come organically.
Yes.
Like when you meet somebody or you connect with someone, you're like, hey, I want to know more about that person. I feel like that always just kind of happens or organically
Yep.
through shared interests or passions.
Yes.
So and speaking of shared interests and passions, before we were recording, and I'm gonna give you an introduction, but we were talking about the Spotify Wrapped showed up on your
Yes.
computer. What is your Spotify Wrapped saying? Like, what are your top three? I feel like you can learn a lot about a person by the music that they listen to. What are your who are your top artists right now?
Well, I think it'd be easier for me to do genres because I just have like more
Okay.
playlist of genres. So I listen to a lot of jazz, and the only reason why is because my husband is super into jazz. So I think the first couple years we were married, he just played it over and over and over and over and over again. So now I just play it when he's gone, and it's like he's here with me, like he's in the music.
Really? So
Yeah,
so it's almost like connecting you.
yeah, that's how it feels. I'll be on an airplane, or I'll be traveling, and if there's a jazz list, I will download that and listen to it. And it's like Adam is with me, and I'll
Is
be
it
like,
tr-
hey,
is it true that no you can't replicate a jazz song? Like you can play it once and then you can never play it that way again.
I'm not like a huge jazz guru in that. I know from the concerts we've been to, we've seen Kamasi Washington in concert, and he plays his stuff differently at like each concert venue, and he puts something new in it. And so I don't know if it's just like they do a free flow type thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it is. But Adam will be like, "Oh, they don't originally have this in the song, but now they've added it." And
Do you listen to jazz while you lift?
no,
Okay.
oh gosh,
I
no.
was gonna say, I don't know if I've heard that before.
No, it's
What do you
just if
listen
I'm
to
like
while you
working.
lift?
Oh man, I'm big into like electronic. Like I want to feel like I'm in a video game. Like I need to feel like I'm like running for my life, high adrenaline.
Yeah.
I have to almost because it's funny. I'll have the music on and then I'll deadlift, right? And people are looking
Hmm.
at the gym like, there's no way she's going to be lifting that stuff up. And then I have people like, oh my gosh. And I take the headphones off and I'm like, oh wow. It just brings me back to reality. Like I'm not.
Don't you think it's so important? Like music during training is so important. I did a
So
podcast
important.
with somebody with that as one of the main topics.
Yeah.
It could change your entire lift.
The psychology, right? Like if you're listening to
Hmm.
depressing music and then you're getting all these
Yeah.
depressing memories, what I like electronic, any like dark synth wave, but
Okay.
what music do you like when you lift? Are you in metal?
Okay.
Are you
So I am a music producer and I produce dubstep.
really?
Hmm. Yeah, that's
Oh
like my
wow.
side project, side passion. And the reason I started DJing and producing music is because I wanted to make stuff that I could listen to in the gym. And I started doing that in
Oh,
2018. I have been doing that so much over the past
mhm.
several years that I it's become almost like work. And so like when I'm listening to it, I'm critiquing it and I'm trying
Oh.
to fix it on the
Is this
fly
a
and being
good thing
like,
or
oh,
a bad thing? Do you like
oh,
that
it's
critique
amazing. It's
or
I it's amazing. It's so amazing that every time I finish a project, I'm like, shut my laptop. I'm like, all right, you need to take a break. Like we're taking like a 1 month no dubstep, like one
right?
month no dubstep. You're not allowed to make anything. That's it. I have not lasted a week and a half. Like before the next project is going. If
You
I'm not creating something
oh
and
yeah.
working that part of my brain, I just feel like there's like
Oh,
I'm like a puzzle. And
mhm.
like when you look at a puzzle and there's a puzzle piece missing, and it's like an eyesore. Like that's how my
Mhm.
how I feel internally. Like there's a piece of me missing. So like I try and so it's a ultimately a good thing. And I have a very obsessive personality where like I get crazy about it and I'm like I think about it all the time and I just want to work on it. So I
Yeah.
have to kind of manage that. But what ends up happening is like when I'm training, I can't be listening to like you can't do two things great at once, right? Because if I'm listening to that, I'm critiquing it and trying to figure out, okay, when I get back to the house,
Mhm.
because what I do is I make it, I export it, and then I listen to it on playback so I can listen for all
Right.
the errors and then go fix those errors. So you can't do that while you're lifting. It's
Mhm.
too distracting. So what ends up happening is
Yeah.
I stay away from dubstep while I'm training because
Mhm.
I just can't handle both. And so I listen to a lot of like alternative, like Linkin Park's like one of my
Okay.
favorite bands of all time. So like they're always in my top plays. I listen to like a lot of kind of like screamo emo stuff, like My Chemical
Okay.
Romance or Blink 182, or just these different types of bands, and then also some like electronic metal stuff because that like gets you really hyped up for the gym.
Blood
So,
pressure rises.
but it's not it's not rare to hear Take on Me or
Okay,
Depeche
there's
Mode or
80s in there.
yes,
Yes,
some
I have
80s in
80s
there.
in there. It
Tears for Fears. Like
appears.
I'm all over the place.
Oh man, I saw Tears for Fears in concert and I just was like screaming in the audience. One of my favorite 80s. 80s would be a genre. It'd be like the third one. Um,
It's not bad for training either.
it's not
It's the
bad,
BPM. If the BPM is up there and it's kind of like you could go
right?
like it is actually not bad for training. And I have like it just like is nostalgia for me. I don't know.
Sometimes, yeah, if it's like one of those days where it's been a bit harder, I look forward to going to the gym, listening to 80s music and eating Pop-Tarts because I'm like, I just need some sort of a lift from the day and that would do it for me, right? And it then the gym just feels like it just feels like such a fun day at the gym. Sometimes I just want to go in there and like grind, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
But then there's other days where I'm like, yeah, no, I just want to enjoy it
Do you
today.
make playlists at all?
I do. I
Oh,
do.
that's awesome.
We're gonna have to exchange some playlists. Now I want to hear some of your music and
You're gonna be like, well, I don't ever promote it like on my personal page. I have a full music page that I could send
okay,
you
then you need
where
to
that's
send the
I keep
music
it's like
page.
I keep it separate. What's really funny about this, and this will kind of segue into what we're going to
Mm,
talk about today, is that my demographics for my music, it's all early 20s. Like that's like the
really?
average is early 20s. And then the
Mm.
demographic for fitness is like upper 30s, early 40s. So it's like
Wow.
totally different demographics.
Are you like on TikTok or are you just
I'm
exclusively in
not on TikTok.
TikTok?
I
Man,
haven't made the move yet. Have
I've
you?
been thinking about it. I'm like, I've just reached such a younger demographic and I'm
Mhm.
been kind of excited about it. And at the same time, I'm like, I went on TikTok and I was like, I need to watch a tutorial for this.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't downloaded it. Um, the reason that I would download it would be to like share maybe some shorts or something like that. But
Yeah.
I'm so bad at like keeping up with what I have. So
I
it's
know
like
what you
to
mean.
add, like,
One
and it's
more
like
thing to
just
the plate. Yes.
one more thing to the plate. I'm trying to, you know, do well at this and stay consistent with this since I
Mm,
just started this.
right.
But I mean, from everything I read or see, it's like you should be on everything. So
No.
it might be eventual.
Yeah. I don't think sometimes, and I love that clients are this way. They're like, man, I just wish you would produce more content and put it out there. And I'm like, man, if I had an assistant, if I had somebody else, right, like it would be pumping out content. But I'm like, I'm a one woman like,
So do you find that content keeping consistent with content is hard because you do keep consistent with your stories. You do a lot of stories and you're very like well spoken and you talk to the camera a lot. So it's like you're talking to your audience. And for people that don't know, My guest today is Janelle Marks. She's a coach at the Wonder Woman, and she's a online coach. She's a bikini competitor, and so and we know each other through the coaching mentorship. So I was also equally excited to have you on today.
Aw, thank you. Thank you. It means a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I think maybe the pain point with content is besides stories where I feel very organic, I overthink the content from my actual page, where even my boss has said, like, just post. You have it in you, just post things, right? Like, don't overthink it, just be like organic and it will just
Mm-hmm.
naturally flow. But my first degree was fashion design. So I like how you have that artistic side, like you were saying. And for me, like I'll look at something aesthetically and I'll go, it's off.
What do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean aesthetically? Like, if you look at your page from a like gallery point of view?
Right. But also like the camera quality, or I look at like the way that I was filmed in it. I'm like, did I like my outfit? Was my hair, was the camera angle the way that I wanted it? Did I like the typeface? Did I like the colors picked? Do the topics flow? Like my brain will overthink it. Like I know you were talking about being obsessive. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
in that realm, anytime someone gives me something creative, like I will obsess over it. Like I want it to look like I want it to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, where most people would not be able to tell the
And
difference.
plus, we're our own worst critics, right? I mean,
I
even
think
as
so.
coaches, you have a
100%.
standard for yourself. You're a
Mm-hmm.
coach because you have high standards. So when it comes to something like that, you're going to pick it apart because do you pick other people's pages apart like you would yours? No, I'm sure not. And you know what's so funny
No,
about that too is like not that success in that area is gauged on like metrics, but you'll have someone who like the videos that a lot of the videos that go viral, they're because aren't they're not like pretty videos, it
no,
could
they're
be anything.
funny
So,
or
yeah, funny.
B-roll or right.
Mhm.
And so when I do go on someone's page and it's not as curated, but they're just consistent, I'm like, man, what would that feel like? I'm like,
Mhm.
they just put themselves out there, and I admire that so much of just like they don't need it to be perfect to post it, sort of a thing.
It is to also like
Mhm.
if you're wanting to post and not just post a picture and you're wanting to post like information,
Right.
you can only say the same thing so many times. Like you're talking about the same stuff
Amen.
over and
Yeah.
over and over, which is kind of hard to do in like a post caption. I
Right.
think talking is a little bit easier when it comes to that kind of stuff.
And you get
Um,
the tone more too, like from the person on like what they're
mhm,
exactly trying to express,
mhm.
right? It's always amazing. Like a client will message, and I'll spend time writing, and they got something great across from it. But unless there's like certain emojis in there or different things like that, like you could read it and not get the same tonality or care. Like I love how Cliff is like, it's the right string of words. I'm like, yes, especially with text.
And do you work with mostly women or it's all women?
All women. Yeah. So
All women.
TW
Okay.
just does all women. I've had some men in the past ask, but being under that coaching umbrella, I'm like, well, A, I can't. And also B, I can think of a ton of like really amazing male coaches that you would maybe like even more, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think when you first start coaching too, Mike, I don't know if you've experienced this, but like you kind of want to take on everybody, but then over time you're so invested in the clients, you're like, whoever you would thrive under best is where I want you, right? So if like I don't feel
Yes.
it's a match, and I know that right off the bat, I'm very candid in saying I really care about you, even just from this first meeting. I don't know if I'm the best match for you.
So one thing that has just from hearing you speak in mentorship and hearing you speak in your stories and just kind of getting the vibe of you as a person,
Mm-hmm.
I actually relate to you a lot in terms of you
Mm-hmm.
could tell that you really care, like you really care about people, and
Yeah.
that it's coming from a genuine place of you
Mm-hmm.
just want to help as many people as you can.
Right. Right. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like everyone will touch each other's lives in some format through our whole lifetime. And if your interactions and over here will really help shape and develop you on the path that you're going for, then I think you should be there. Right. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to over control things. I think anytime anybody tries to micromanage or over control the process to some degree, like contest prep, of course, there is you need to have, a certain amount of structure, but for so many other things in life, I'm like, you hold on too hard and you'll miss the point.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And plus with your clientele,
Mm-hmm.
the ones that are not competing, a lot of times people they're not coming in at a good starting spot. They're coming in a place where they're at their lowest. And
Mm-hmm.
so I have always had a huge amount of empathy for people and for people to trust me with their bodies and to take them on this journey and to teach them to turn it into a complete lifestyle.
Right.
And sometimes they're just trying to get through not even the week, like the day. So the wisdom that you can pass down to them, and kind of, it takes a while to kind of like form a lifestyle, and you have to kind of take them step by step through it. But it's so rewarding, right? Like it's such a rewarding process.
Right. I think so many of those clients coming in, they're looking for the body to save them, right? Like once I get this certain body, it will unlock this in my life. But I'm like, what you're really looking for is you don't really quite know yourself and you're looking for a full self agency. And because you don't have that and you don't know the different parts of yourself, it is very confusing. And you're like, why I have all these shifting desires and I'm up and I'm down and I'm here and I'm there. And so with anything, I just say to my clients, like, I will give you the roadmap to get where you want to go, and I'll partner with you as long as the goal is realistic, right? And the timeline's realistic. But I just want you to have full self agency. Like I want you to really know yourself and all those nooks and crannies and work with yourself to keep achieving things even after this. Like
That's such a great way of phrasing it. Um, and within all of that, under that umbrella,
mm-hmm.
having a support system could make or break some people. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about support systems today. And I'm really interested in hearing stories about this, your opinion on this. And then also, I think because we're coming from very different places with this, I was really excited about hearing this because from talking with people, talking with clients, just living life, you see it. I mean, you don't have to look hard to see it. You could go into a place, even like a workplace or something.
Yes.
And if a person is sticking to like a fitness regimen,
Mm-hmm.
people start to question them, or people start to put pressure on them, or people start to make comments. And it's very, people are susceptible to pressures and
100%.
these external forces. And what's funny about it, or not
Right.
funny, but just kind of interesting, is that wherever you go, and if you're listening to this, likely wherever you go, you're, unless you're hanging out with like a bunch of fitness people, like me and Cliff go work out or what, that's one
Right.
thing. Or if I go to my brother's or
Right.
whatever. But unless, wherever you go, you're probably going to be the only one who is on a fitness regimen. Most people are not. I mean, they might go work out here or there. Maybe they might dabble in like, oh, I'll get the healthier option every once in a while, but they're not on any form of a consistent regimen. So if you're going to dinner, if you're having dates, if you're going to work, wherever you go, if you're going with friends for the weekend, you're going on a trip, like you're going to be the outlier,
Right.
which can be difficult. So I'm very curious to hear some of your stories, or maybe even some clients' stories, or how that's affected you. So how has this played a role in your world?
Wow. I mean, I think that was a great intro to the topic, Mikey. So well done. I know we were talking in the chat when we were discussing like topics
I
to
like
talk.
all these compliments, by the way. I'm gonna have you on more often.
And for preference, I didn't try to watch a lot of these. I wanted to go in and just like get to know you through this without like overdoing research or anything. I was like, I just want to
Absolutely.
get in and talk to Mikey. We were
This is
talking,
a place where like the less research, the better, because A, I'm gonna ask questions, and B,
right,
you don't go to a conversation prepared. This is conversations.
right,
This isn't like a lectures or
right.
anything like that. Like I really want to create an organic space where people can feel free to just like relax. So no prep work needed.
No prep work needed. Well, Mikey and I were talking about topics, and I was talking about how in my prep, I've done shows, and my husband has never been at any of my shows ever. My first show, no one was in the audience. I traveled solo to that by myself. And my second show, my dad was the only one in the audience.
Was that intentional, like on your part? Like, did you not want anyone in the audience? Because I have had people ask to come to
Mm,
my shows, and I'm like, no, nobody's coming to my show. I do not want to have to worry about entertaining you. I don't want to talk to you. When I'm at the
right.
show, I'm like, I'm doing my thing and I don't want to think about anything else.
Right. It wasn't intentional. It was more like, well, we don't want to buy the tickets to fly out to this location. Or, I think too, when you start getting into bodybuilding, like you were saying, it's so foreign to most people. And some people I would say are cynical and probably a right way of kind of like, are they really going to go through with the whole prep? Because prep is very difficult, especially to achieve the level of leanness that's required. I mean, every category is different, but there's a lot of people who start prep and never finish prep, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and for so many reasons, either A, they realize it's not for them, or B, their coach took them in a poor direction, right? Where they can't finish. Like they get
I think
stuck.
prep is the hardest thing a person. Well, okay, so like outside of like the obvious like hard things like that a
Right,
person will go through in life, like
right.
I yeah, I don't have to specify, but
Mm-hmm.
out of choice, like I don't think that there's anything harder than a prep from start to finish. I think it's the hardest thing you can do.
I think it's incredibly hard. I think the speculation that surrounds the sport and like people are constantly asking you, like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And then they're watching you go through this hard process, right? Where like you're hungry, you're tired, you're fighting these inner desires for like these basic needs, right? You're taking yourself to a place that you've never gone before. And for me, like, I think my parents are like, do you have to do this? Right. So it was a level of like, A, we're not going to get the tickets. B, are you going to do this? And C, this is hard to kind of watch this process of somebody changing this way. And we've never seen anybody
Was
do
it the weight that you were dropping, or was it your demeanor? What caused them to? Was there a certain point in prep where you started just kind of looking a certain way or acting a certain way? What caused your family to get concerned?
Yeah. Yeah. My first prep. So for just like data reference, I'm 5'8.5". And my show weight at my first show was 119. So I was like thin. Man,
Yeah.
I was like, my dad was like, I don't know whether or not to congratulate you or check you into a clinic, right? Because the level of leanness I had, he was like, is this okay? And my mom was like, oh my goodness. And my husband, I remember we were like in bed one night and he looked over at me and he goes, you are so thin, like so thin. And like not used to seeing me at that level of leanness. Like, and even looking back, I mean, your first show, right? I was underdeveloped. I didn't have a lot of muscle mass, right? And
Sure.
I even look at the pictures, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I
It's amazing the low weights that you touch when you don't see it because it happens gradually. You don't see it clearly until you look back. And weird things even happen like your speech patterns slow down, the way you move, everything is like in slow motion because your body's just conserving energy. So like even like the way you move through space, it if when you go through it for the first time, you just get hit with all of these different things and you don't know what's happening and you can't really see it clearly until you look back on the process and you're like, oh my God, I was so gaunt.
So yeah. And two, like for me, I don't, this is just my own personal thing, is when I was doing my first prep and even my second prep, you know, when you go in your day-to-day life, like you're eating a certain amount of food, you're doing certain things. And so certain things wouldn't come up to the surface, but it was like when the food was gone, when I was, you know, doing all this exercise, it's like all these skeletons that I hid in my closet and like didn't want to address. It's like they had a campfire in my living room. And I was like needing to process all this emotional stuff too, of like, wow, I've used all this extra energy when I could not to face it, but because I don't have the energy to shut the door anymore, I have to face all the skeletons in my living room. So I think it was like just not seeing like the physical aspect for my family and my husband, but also the emotional aspect of like, wow, why am I doing this? And what things have I not talked about? And so it was just like a huge burst of like momentum for me in a bunch of different areas of my life. And they were seeing like a new version of me come to light very quickly, right? Like, you know, people organically change in time, but sometimes I feel like prep just like exposes and opens you in so many different ways, where when you're done with the prep and you've gone through it and you've completed it, you are a different person. Like your mindset, what's important to you, where you want to go, what you thought was important, it just all changes. And that, at least that was the experience that I had.
I think that's so when you talk about prep, see, like there's so much more to bodybuilding than vanity. There
Yeah.
really is.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, some people do it for vanity purposes.
100%.
And I don't think everyone takes away these life lessons, but I think that inquisitive, um, curious people who are working on self-improvement for the right reasons, they do take away life lessons from prepping. And there is a lot you can learn about yourself during that process. And it also goes to show that you can't just like mask everything. A lot of people will prep to like distract themselves, and because what's a better distraction than like all of this dieting? And when
Right.
you're thinking of when you're starving and prep, let's get it real. Like let's talk straight. You are starving yourself. That's what you're doing, but you're doing it in a way that it's slow
Mm-hmm.
and that you hold muscle. That's
Yes.
it. You get to a point because you are starving yourself,
So
and
hungry.
you're so hungry, and that is when you don't have that human the human basic need of food, then you're not really thinking about these other problems. Like that is a huge distraction. So like I think a lot of people do use prep for a distraction from what's going on in their life, but that door, like you said, it opens and it's in your living room. So you can't run away forever. You do have to face those things. But I do think that if you're very self-aware and you're working on becoming the best you can possibly be, then prep can be one of the best, most rewarding processes a human can go through. It's not for everyone. And I don't
No.
say that lightly. It can cause eating disorders, physiological disorders, like we were just talking about. It can cause huge problems. It can cause a divorce. It could cause,
That's I
I mean,
totally
it's not just your body,
right.
your mind. I mean, it can affect the people around you. It can become a really bad thing if you're not ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are ready for it and it is something that you're passionate about,
Mm-hmm.
then it could be one of the best things that you have in life. Like when I look back at all of my preps, they're all very different.
I I'd love to hear about some of your preps. Like,
Uh,
are they what
so
would
what's
you say?
interesting kind of about this topic is I've never, because I prep every like 3 to 5 years. So I always take like a 3 to 5 year off season. I only didn't do that one time. And then I learned, yeah, don't do that. Don't compete back to back. Like even that 2019 to 2021, that's about as close as you want to get
I learned my
before.
lesson. I
That's a
was like, I need a
yeah,
couple of years off before I decide to embark on this again. And by then I should be able to see some good fruit of the labor I'm putting in as well.
exactly.
Oh,
So I mean, I've always wanted to be a bodybuilder. Like ever since I started working out, like getting
Oh,
magazines, like I always wanted to be a bodybuilder. I just never knew how to be a bodybuilder. Like I always had the work ethic. I just didn't have the knowledge. And
yeah.
so until I met up with Cliff and Katie, I was with like trainers who were just average trainers that didn't know much about diet. So I never learned. I was real inquisitive. I just never learned. And so until I got with them, then I started learning. And that's when I started becoming a bodybuilder. And so every, I mean, every prep, I was never in a relationship. I've still never been in a relationship while it's not intentional. It just
Right.
happens that way.
Right.
So my first prep was real smooth. My second prep was brutal. That was the prep where I
Oh,
started making all the mistakes, all the
okay.
mistakes. And it was the back to back season. I mean,
Mm,
I started binging at the end, like when I finished the prep, not during the prep, but at the end of the prep, like in my reverse diet, started binging.
mm.
I was watching the Food Network while I was prepping. I was
That's like a
abusing.
sin. Like you can't do that to yourself. Scrolling Pinterest for cookie recipes.
Right, but the information wasn't there then. Like that wasn't like, now it's like
Right.
known, like don't do that,
Right.
like that's not something you do. And that's not something I do on the regular either. Like that, it happened over time.
Right. From the
This
con-
is so embarrassing. There was a time, oh, this is so embarrassing. So I was dead set that I was going to open up a donut shop. Like I was putting together a business plan for it. This was in
Yeah.
prep. I'm not eating donuts. I'm not tasting donuts, but I was looking at properties to buy, and I had like a name.
Oh,
I designed a logo. Like I was doing things without
I
realizing that
could
I was
see
doing them.
it. I could see it, Voodoo Donuts in Portland or something like that. I could see you with
Yes,
some crazy artistic donut shop.
that's exactly what it was like. And I had a property uh, that I was looking at, and I was, I had a business model, all these different things. And then
Wow.
I ate, and I'm like, what? Like, what am I thinking? Like, what am I doing? Like, it's amazing what a
Oh,
little
wow.
food can do to you. I
Yeah.
was just starving. Yeah, I'm gonna wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning every morning and go make these donuts myself.
I love it. You should
It's so,
For Halloween when you're
so
please be the baker from your donut shop
and
that
then
you were
I
gonna
had a name
make.
picked out. It was called Grizzly Donuts. Like, and it was like this big grizzly bear that was like eating donuts. It was pretty. It was all pink and everything. It's so
That's awesome.
embarrassing.
Maybe you revive it one day and you're doing like
You
the
never know. It's
and
not
the
a bad idea, but
yeah. Well, they have the
yeah,
post-it cookies,
I
post-it
was
donut.
just, yeah, like if you can't tell from my content, desserts, all that stuff, like it doesn't matter on or off season, but I love all that stuff.
I
But
saw a Diet Dr. Pepper in there and I knew instantly, I was like, I like this guy because Diet Dr. Pepper is my jam.
Diet Dr. Pepper is awesome.
It's so
I
good.
love Diet Dr. Pepper. I I to get off topic, I can't remember the last time I've had like a real soda. Like pop was do you call it pop or soda?
I call it soda. I know a lot of us Midwest folks, though, we call it pop.
When I was in Austin, Texas, people used to side eye me because I would call it pop because I lived in Austin for a year, and I'd be like, hey, because whenever I would go out, I'd order diet pop, and they'd be like, where are you from? But I have not had like a regular soda probably since I was a kid. Diet soda to me tastes so good. Like I wouldn't.
Better.
I can't justify. I'm not. I can't justify the carbs. Like I'm
Right.
just not gonna drink. And the idea of drinking syrup, like soda, does not sound good to me. But diet pop is so good.
So good. So good. I mean, I always have like different types of diet soda in the cabinet and I've had a couple sips, right? Like sometimes I'll be a little paranoid when I'm out, right? Because when you count your food and all this stuff,
Paranoid?
you go to a restaurant and you're like, did they give me the right soda? Did
Oh
they give me
yeah,
the diet soda? So I'll look at my husband, I'm like, taste this. Is this the diet one?
yeah.
And he tastes it and he goes, what's wrong with you? This is diet soda. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I just need to know that I'm
He's
not,
like, how can you not tell? Because it
I
tastes
cannot
like so
tell.
bad, probably compared to regular. Like, but it what I
Right.
from what I gather, if you drink diet, then regular tastes weird. But if you drink regular, then diet tastes like what are you drinking?
What are you drinking? Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Pepper, Diet Dr. Pepper's my favorite diet pop. And sometimes I'll get like if I'm feeling real frisky, Diet Mountain Dew.
Okay, I haven't done a Diet Mountain Dew in forever, but I go in between
It's like
like,
battery acid.
but they, I feel like I'll give Mountain Dew credit for this is the diet flavors, they do keep up. Like sometimes they'll issue like a special Coke and I'm like, please tell me you have that in like the diet version. And they don't, right?
Right. Yeah.
Where Mountain Dew, I feel like they really are like, we have the regular and the diet of the special flavor.
Pro tip. Diet Mountain Dew has the highest content of caffeine than any other diet pop. So like Diet Coke is like 60 milligrams. Dr. Pepper's like
40?
is it? Yeah, it's like 40 or 50, something like that. And then but Diet Mountain Dew is like up there at like 80 or 90. So like that's like
That your
that's a
pre-workout
bonus.
jam is your Diet Mountain Dew?
That's like shooting a rhino with a BB. I need more than that for a pre-workout. Do you drink? Do you? That's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. Do you drink pre-workout powder or no?
No, if I need a little caffeine, I'll drink a little bit of like Diet Dr. Pepper, but I'm so sensitive to caffeine that if I have it, like just like a diet soda towards the end of the day, I'm up to like 3 a.m.
What would happen if you drank pre-workout? Would you be just off the rails? Because that's like the
I
pre-workout I drink is 300 milligrams of caffeine.
I probably pass out. I don't know. I'd be you guys. You want me to travel out to Indiana to meet you and Cliff,
Yes.
and I'll take and I'll come train with you guys and be off the wall.
Oh God, absolutely. That would be a gift. And between you and me, with that 300, that's a there's a heaping scoop. So we're probably at 330. But what I've started doing is I've started like right now I'm drinking coffee. This
Yeah.
is decaf. So I'm gonna
I've got my decaf here too.
okay. So what I started because I used to just be like, and I'm still, I competed this year, so I'm still like not completely normal. Like
Okay.
I'm still there's still things that are not completely back to normal. Like my sleep is still not completely back to normal. For me, that caffeine intake, I don't have many vices. Caffeine, becomes the vice because if you can't like I'm a high stim guy, like I can't like do anything. I can't not that I can't, but I'm not going to do anything, like anything we'll say that would be bad, which is subjective, but bad in terms of calories, I'll say.
Right.
So the caffeine intake is the one thing that I'm like, giddy up, let's go. So yeah, I know going into prep that's gonna go. I somewhat look forward to it. I'm like excess. All right. So I'll let that get up there to it's been up there at 800 milligrams a day, towards the end. But what I started doing is I'm like, I don't need to be drinking this much caffeine, but the pre-workout that I need, like,
Yeah.
that's the time to blast off. So I'm like, okay, if I'm waking up and drinking coffee,
Okay.
so that's caffeine. Then I'm going to the gym. Then I'm coming back. I'm like, I got emails to do. You're like, giddy up, let's go. So it's like, and then I have no problem falling asleep. So I don't know what that says about me. But so I'm like, let me just replace this coffee with decaf. I'm telling you, half of that is like psychosomatic because there's like just placebo. Like I just the fact that I think that I'm drinking coffee, even though I know it's decaf, it like gives me the effect. So it's not really the caffeine that I'm after because I've accidentally drank or drunk. Could go either way, right?
Well, I think drank, like when you say drunk, it actually sounds like you're drunk. Like instead of like
get drunk before the gym. I've drank essential amino acids like with my electrolytes Because like I
Yeah.
have two shakes, right? So like one of them is like the intra shake, and one of them is the pre-workout shake.
Got it.
So I mixed them up one day, and I drank the intra. There's no caffeine in the intra, and I'm sitting there thinking I'm getting hyped up, and I get to the gym, and I take a sip, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is my pre-workout. I switched them on accident, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I was just getting hyped up. I go, would you look at that? I was like, I just drank some essential amino acids and just electrolytes, and I'm getting hyped up thinking I'm drinking caffeine. So that goes to show you the power of the mind. Really. Yeah, it could really do, it could work for you or against you. But so speaking of working against, I was doing all those bad things in my second prep where
Mm.
that was the one that I struggled. That was the one that I struggled with the most. And then I competed again in 2020, which was like talking about all the stuff that was going on in 2020. It was like the perfect distract. Like I was like, it was perfect. I was like, this is like the perfect time to compete, you know? So I'm like, plus everyone's going to be like off their game. Like this is perfect for me. And
Yeah.
then I competed again in 2023. But each of these preps, I've not been in a relationship. And it's just kind of worked out that way. So my relationship has been in between things, you know?
Yeah.
So it's not been anything that I've ever faced
Mhm.
in my personal life where I've had a support system not being supportive. I have had family members express concern, particularly around that rough one, because when you're going through like a real rough patch, it's hard to like hide that in your demeanor and the way you show up in the rest of
I feel
your
it.
life.
Yeah.
And that's also something like when you're prepping, you have to be very careful because it is not responsible or it's not good to be a jerk in your life, whether it be at work, going to the store, to your partner, to your family, friends, whoever. If
Mhm.
you can't prep and be pleasant to be around, then I don't think prepping is a good idea. And a lot of people get into that mode where like, okay, I'm prepping, so everyone around me, I'm miserable, so everyone
Thanks,
around me is
me.
going to be miserable.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I've definitely seen that. I've heard other people have that takeaway post prep. They're like, I was way too self-consumed and I didn't include people in on the process, or I felt like everybody had to revolve around my gym schedule or what I was doing, or I stopped going to things and I did all that. And I'm like, yeah, no wonder people kind of naturally drew away, right? Because you felt like the prep was all around you. And most people are like, I'm sure you've seen people in the past, like they'll set up a GoFundMe to compete and stuff. And it's like, dude, nobody cares.
What?
Like
I've not seen that.
I've seen a couple where people are like,
Someone set up a GoFundMe for their for them to compete.
yeah, to pay for like the bikini and different things like that. And but
That's
just not
wild.
realizing, right? Like people are going to be thinking of like you choose to compete. Nobody puts
Mm-hmm.
a gun to your head and says you're going to do the show. You made that financial decision. You made that choice.
Mm-hmm.
You have to see it through, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus like it's the responsibility of everyone else to be there.
Yeah, and then you will have pushback too, because people won't want you to compete. They'll be like, "Oh no, like he's competing again." And I have had
Mm,
like things come up. So like I'm really close with my family. Like mom, like
wow,
as
that's
close as you
amazing.
can be with your family. And so like say my mom and I got into my mom is like the only listener to this podcast right now, like I was telling you about. Hey mom. So we would maybe get in an argument. She'd be like, "You're just mad because you're dieting." And I'm like, oh, I don't like that. So
Wouldn't put that card,
I've
yeah.
had my mom check me before.
Yeah.
Like, and there is something like if you have a real support system, like a good support system, they will check your ass and be like, they'll tell you the things that you need to hear, not that you want to hear. And so, like, after like the dust settles, I'm like, Mom, I'm sorry. Like, I apologize if I was, I didn't mean to be, and I don't want to be, because I don't want to be that guy where when I compete, anyone's like, oh, I don't want to be around him. He's competing. So I'll even go the opposite way, and like I'll even try to be more social during my preps, because I'm a not a very not that I'm not a social guy.
Mhm.
I am a very homebody, routine, go to the gym, do my work. Like that's my I just love it. That's what I love do. I love working on music and all the things I love that I do from the comfort of my own home. Work, other than like going to the gym. So um that's where I'll force myself to go be more social, because it's good to do for the people that want to see you and
Yeah,
for you to get that. But also when you're in prep, you get this, I'm just gonna sit here and wait for my next meal. Like that's all I want to do. Like I'm just
right.
literally counting down the seconds till this next meal because you're
So
that
hungry.
hungry. So
Yeah.
going out and doing things really takes your mind off of how hungry you are and how bad you feel during prep, because there comes a point where you do become like you do feel so physically and mentally terrible that when you're sitting at home by yourself, that is just that can be really really tough and make things harder. And when you're out and you ever like go out and go do something, you're like, wow, I wasn't thinking about like how hungry I am, and now I have a nice big, I even got like a bigger meal waiting for me when I get home because I didn't have like that one meal. So now I get to combine these meals, and now I get a big meal when I get home, and then I get to go to bed. So it's like you get
It-
excited and you're a little bit happier, and then you always wake up and you're like, I'm so glad I went out.
right. And I just take my giant like cup of like ice flavored water with me, right? And it'd be
Yeah.
so great to distract for a while from that hunger and just be like, oh wow, it wasn't that bad. I was able to go
Yeah.
for hours.
So how did this affect your prep, and how did you kind of come together afterwards, talk about it? Like where did that go? Because you were feeling very not supported at home, is that correct?
Oh, totally. And I think it's the best way to describe it is like people are definitely can be mirrors in situations. So like my husband was coming from his vantage point on the sport at that time. Now he has since changed, right? But for him, my husband is like really into spirituality. He's always reading up on theology, and like the body's like very sacred, and like we're married, and like our union's very special. And so like me competing and the type of outfit that you wear for competing and the whole thing to him just felt like a big betrayal. And like I wasn't honoring like what we have. So and he just kept looking at the sport in the mirror of the sport is sexual, right? And I was trying to say like I can definitely see that as the outfits do not cover much, especially for the females, right? You're seeing the anatomy of the body. And so for him, that was the point he was coming from. And he's just like, every time that I see you do this process, it just makes me feel like the prep is more important than me. And so because it was so important to me, I really wanted to do this. I was like, I feel like you're not supportive and you can't see it past your own lens. Whereas to me, I just saw this as like one of the ultimate physical endeavors that you could do. And that was very attractive to me. I wanted to know what that felt like. I wanted to go through that experience. And so on my end, what was terrible, Mikey, was I wouldn't tell him things. I would totally keep him out of the prep. Like I thought,
Like
well,
what's an example that you wouldn't like, something that you would keep in or not talk about?
um, like a good one is like for the first one, like he knew the date of the show, but I didn't want to talk about the flights or like different things like that. I didn't want to talk about what my suit looked like. I didn't want to talk about my posing practice. And when I would meet a coach for posing practice, like I wanted to keep all of that like under lock and key. Because
So like
anytime,
the stuff that you were probably pretty excited about.
yes, right. So I'd be like, had a posing session today, right? Could really see my glutes come through. I'm really excited about the level of leanness I'm starting to see in my abs. Like none of that conversation would be like brought forth, because if it was, it just created an argument. And then it would just cause such stress, right? Because then I'm like, okay, I'm arguing with my partner now. This doesn't feel good. And it's like, does he really want to know these details? Does he not want it? Because it seems like it's like overburdening to him. And he's just upset. And like sometimes he wanted, and seen from his lens, I could see why it was important at the time. He's like, well, what are the exact poses? And like, like he's getting nervous, right? And then I would just not talk about it because I'm like, he's going to see it in a lens that
It's
I
a
feel
weird process if you're not in it. Like
if you're not in it.
even so when I got my this was funny. When I got my posing trunks in the how they send them to you in the mail,
Yes.
I opened it and I was in prep and I opened it and I wasn't like lean yet. I ordered it early and I opened it and I pulled it up and I'm like, how the fuck am I going to fit into this little no,
Oh,
it's a thong. This is a
yeah.
thong. I'm like, okay,
Yes.
this is I'm just not even putting this in the drawer. This is staying right on the kitchen table. This is motivation for me to just like
Go up,
not
right?
miss anything. Like I have got to
Definitely.
fit in this, and then you do. But it's so
So small.
the ironic thing about this, and I've talked about this before, is
Mhm.
when you're backstage and you have all of these people in the prime shape of human beings, like as good a shape. Guys are walking around shredded to the bone, muscles popping out everywhere, tan, trimmed, like shaved down, like you're just looking your best. Women are looking their best, makeup done, these tiny little outfits. On paper, this should be a giant orgy, but it's
That's what
nobody.
people think,
That's what
right?
people think, but
That's what people
nobody
think.
is looking at anybody
Like
because
that
everyone is there for one reason:
to win,
to bring their best.
right?
To They've put in so much work, blood, sweat, tears, literally sometimes, and some people are literally dragging themselves across the finish line. Like we're having a coach drag them across the finish line, and all of the work that's gone into this, you are so focused on going, hitting your poses,
Right.
t- your sodium, your carbs, all of these different things are going through your head. There's not anything sexual about it. Like it is so far from it, which from
So
the outside perspective, I could totally see where someone would be concerned about their partner, like doing, like, why are you doing all this? Like, what are you showing off for? Why are you thinking you're going to
very
get all this
um,
attention, and then you're
yep,
going to be backstage with all, or be around all of these, like, you
guys,
know,
and yeah,
guys and all of this stuff. It's really weird. I remember my brother, other than Cliff, the only people that ever came to my show was my brother, because he would help me like tan some and stuff like that. And my brother's like my best friend, so he's
aw,
just always around.
way to go,
And
brother.
yeah, he's the best. And his wife, my sister-in-law, she's like so out of the sport, like that she's not anywhere near the fitness industry. She's, they're civilians, right? So, but
Okay,
they came,
I got what you
yeah,
mean.
yeah, they're
Yeah, yeah,
civilians. So, and they're backstage, right? And
yeah.
so Zach's like tanning me and stuff like that. And Brittany, my sister-in-law, is just sitting there taking it in. Like his wife, she's like, what? This place is wild. And someone just walks up to Brittany and like he was a bodybuilder, so he's in a man thong and posing trunks, and he's like, "Hey, can you pin this on my, on my side here?" And that's normal behavior in a, like,
Right.
when you're
So
back
it
there, you're
was, of
asking,
course.
you're helping people out. Like if someone
Right.
needs you to rub tan, yeah, I'll rub tan on your. I've had to rub tan on a man before that I don't know that was doing. It was actually Darren Steen who was guest posing, and he was like, "Hey, can you guys tan me up?" And me and Cliff were like, "Sure." So we're just tanning him up, and it's
Right.
just
You don't
normal
think
behavior
it's
in that
right.
atmosphere. So she was like, okay, and she just pinned it on him, and then he I looked over and me and my brother just started laughing so hard because we're like, oh my God, Brittany's like in the mix now, putting on this this guy's number on his posing trunks. But it's like from an outside perspective, it's super. I mean, it definitely there's definitely uh a sexual tone to it that you would think, but once you're in it, you that's just not what's going on there.
Or like, even I think for him, there was the question of like, isn't my attention enough? And I'm like, this isn't about gaining tons of attention from guys, right? Maybe in the beginning, like when I was getting into it, perhaps a little bit, but once I like got set in the path, I was like, that's not what this is about. But it was so hard to communicate that, right? Because that's just the lens he was seeing. He just could not see it any other way. And so he's like, you know what? If you decide to do this, there wasn't a talk of divorce or anything like that, but he was like, if you do this, know that it really hurts me and I won't be there. And then I had to make the choice of like, I'd already come so far though, right? Like by that point, when we were having that conversation, I must have been 6 weeks out, 8 weeks out. And I was like, I am so close to the finish line. Like, I don't want to stop. Right. And so I did my first show. I came home. It was a bit awkward after that. But we worked through it. And then I did a build. Right. So there was no talk of shows for like quite some time. Right. And we're both growing as people. And then I get into the second show. And
Because their turnaround was pretty quick. So like if you're competing in 2019, by the time what 6 months to like turn around before you start another cut, probably like 6-8 months, something like that.
Yeah, it was like it was at the very, very, very end of 2019. And then I basically built for a year and then back in and did a cut in the spring. Okay. So I had been in like this off-season mode for what felt like a very long time, right? And I gained weight and I did all these things. And so there was like such a sense of normalcy.
Uh-huh.
And then I was like, I want to do it again. And the same thing came up, right? Of just like,
did it come up right away?
It did, of like, I think he was like, are you sure you want to do this? I'm like, yeah, I want to do this. And then I must have been like 3 months in, and then it was just like, just constant like disagreement of like the whole thing. And I realized because of the way I had handled the first prep, right, and I had not really shared a lot of the details, it made the second time way worse. So if I had gone back and changed things, I probably would have been like giving more information, trying to work through, trying to maybe understand his perspective more. Because like you were saying, for anybody who's outside of the sport, it's very weird. They're like, why? It doesn't make sense. And then you get dressed up in the sparkly stuff, right? And you go on stage and
it looks like you're looking for attention, but clear you're not. And every single person there is doing the same thing. So yeah, so, I could totally see that.
Right. And then my, like even talking to my brother, I would just be like, Adam and I are just conflicted over this. And he goes, I mean, you're my sister, but he said, if my wife was doing that, I would have very similar feelings about this. And the more guys that I seem to come into contact with, and that sort of conversation would come up, they would all say the same thing. Like, that would be very hard for me as a spouse to watch my wife go and compete and do something like that. And so over time, I was realizing how difficult this was for him. And so after my second show, my husband was like, this is just like really painful for me. And I just don't know how I would navigate another prep with you. And so at that time I said, if it's this hurtful for you, and this was like, Mikey, this was like devastating. I'm like going to get teary-eyed. I said, then I won't compete anymore because you're way more important than any show. And it must have been like, I don't know, like 7 or 8 months later, we were in the car and my husband turned to me and he said, I really want to apologize to you. I said, well, why? And he said, because I've been doing a lot of thinking, a lot of reading. And he said, I've completely changed my stance on competing. I see where you're coming from now, and I support you. If you want to go back and do it, I totally understand. And I don't know exactly like what the process was. I don't know if he talked to somebody. I know he had brought up a book. I wish I knew what book it was, because I read this book, completely changed my mind on this. And he's like, I get it now. And I support you. And I just was like, that just meant so much to me. But I also think too, it's a testament of like, I think because I gave there, he also gave there, if that makes sense. Like,
That makes total sense. I mean, that's super powerful. This is something that you're eternally passionate about and clearly invested in, even part of your job. And you were willing to compromise
right.
and put his feelings above your own. And that is something that is, for a partner, that's incredible. That's a big, isn't that a big part of like compromise and kind of taking your partner's feelings into consideration? Because you were seeing that he was hurting. I mean, seeing your partner hurt it had to have been hurtful for you too, to see him hurt that much.
It made prep very difficult, because it wasn't just like, I disagree with you on this. It's like, this actually hurts. So like, I would see my husband like shed tears over this.
Did it
And
affect your diet? So like, as you're prepping, because like I'm doing the math in my head,
right.
there's a lot going on so I'm thinking about like, I kind of go over things like a little narrative in my story. Like I'm thinking like, are they sharing a kitchen space? And in the kitchen, there's just resentment going on as she's weighing her food out and all that kind of stuff. So was it like that intense?
Um, it would be like, we would go out on a date, and
Mm-hmm.
I know exactly what I would order, and it's like, no, please, no sauce, and keep this plain, and don't add this. And the meal would come, and like, I'm like slowly eating it, like trying to relish it, and like I'm trying to be present, but the whole time, like, I can just see my husband is just like unplugged. Like,
Yeah. Oh, that
like,
sounds so difficult.
it
That
was.
sounds very hard in a prep, because again, I've not, just even in relationships that I've been in, that's
Mhm.
just that's just Mikey. Like, like it's not even like it's almost like a just laugh, like it is what it
Right.
is. And so to think about how difficult that would be. And I have spoken to many people, like many people, obviously through coaching and friends and stuff, and it's really common. Like I think that is way more common than like, I know that I'm an outlier with this stuff. Even like my family would joke, like they'd be like, what if it's Nanny's birthday? I'm like, I'm gonna tell Nanny to go fuck herself now. And then we'd all laugh, like, you know what I mean? Like my grandma would be like, oh,
Right.
I just want my Mikey to have but my grandma would be like, Mikey, will this fit in your macros? I'm like, for you it will. For you it will.
Right. There's a
But
special
when it's
occasion.
prep, like it's prep. Like when it's prep, because like when I prep, I know a lot of people will like estimate restaurant food and stuff. I remove all restaurants during the whole prep. So no restaurants. I not just like 6 weeks out or anything. Like
I
I
take the
remove
travel
everything.
scale and I measure
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
food.
yeah. That's what you do though. Like that is
Right.
what you
What you
that is
do.
yeah. And I don't mind, like there's this thing also, like you ever feel, because you coach lifestyle people too, like you kind of feel like, I don't want to scare people off. I don't want to be unrelatable. And I'm not saying other people have to do this. This is just what I do. I do weigh everything. I do weigh all the supplements. I do count mustard. I do count no calorie. Like that 1/4, that boop, that little 1/4 little no
Little shot.
stray for your pan. You better believe I'm counting that. So
Right.
that's how
Gum.
it's
I do
it's
that.
not. I don't consider it obsessive. I want this. Like I'm doing everything that I want to do. And I like doing that. Like I like, kind of like I was saying with the double step.
Right.
That's just fits in line with my personality. I haven't had something like a child or a marriage or something where this would get dicey.
Right.
or even where conversations would have to be had. Like, because I'm not gonna, because I'm sure there will be things. I believe in, like a partnership, a marriage. You're Look, I don't want to go to the zoo lights right now, but I'm gonna go because
Right.
my
Because
wife wants to go.
it's you.
And I want her to be happy, and I want to go do like bringing joy to other people,
Right.
and doing things that they want. That's
Right.
important. And so, like, whenever I've been in a relationship, I've always been pretty good with that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
um but I've not had a prep where, like, I've been married. I've never been married, no kids or anything. So I'm it's probably sounds pretty easy from where I'm standing. Like, if anyone listens, like, yeah, maybe it's easy for you, and maybe it is easy for me because I don't have to face all that stuff. And I also really enjoy all of the, like, little details, and
Ah.
being really meticulous with everything. But
Mm.
I have a lot of conversations with people. I'm not that out of touch where I don't know that this is a thing. And I can totally see where this would be so challenging. I mean, I can't imagine how challenging that would be in a prep. The fact that you made it to the end is pretty incredible.
2 times.
two,
Yeah, no,
two times.
times. I wish I would have brought a better package, but like I remember there was multiple arguments that we had, and I just kept trying to like explain my point of view, right? But I understand that he's looking at his own vantage point, right? I'm coming from my vantage point. They clearly are never going to align. So it's a constant like, and I would go to the gym with like my face was tear stained, and like
Mm-mm.
other bodybuilders knew like just how hard the prep was. And they were like, you're almost to the finish line, keep going. And I'm like, it's just so hard when your partner is like in pain and then they think that you're doing this to like hurt them.
And it kind of puts a little shame on the whole thing. Like now you're doing this, and even though you're not coming from that place, I
Mhm.
would have to imagine there'd be a bit of shame involved with it, because you know that the person that is the most important person in your life
Right,
thinks that you're doing this for ulterior reasons, you have ulterior motives with it, and that they're kind of shameful. Like, like that's kind of like puts a little ick
right.
over the whole
Like,
process. So while you're posing and working, and it's got to be in the back of your head, or probably actually at this point in the front of your mind.
right, where I'm like, my partner thinks that I'm doing this for other validation or different reasons, and that's not why. Like, I'm passionate about this. And so like the week before my show, I remember we had a huge argument and I was crying for hours. And of course, like peak week, that's not
No, stress is gonna mess
the
everything
stress
up.
was going to mess. And
And you were traveling. Didn't you say you traveled too? Like that,
the first
like
one,
traveling. Like, if you're
yes,
traveling, like, if I go on an airplane, when I land, my body is holding on to
feels
more
it,
water.
right? Yeah, so that I mean, just the stress alone was a lot. But I know this is going to sound weird for people who are listening to this. I'm not
It's just
happy
my
that
mom.
it's just your mom. I'm not like, ooh, it put my husband through a lot of pain. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am proud of is like I stuck to something that was very important to me. And then at a point where like I accomplished it, I was like, okay, now I have to, is this really, I think this could like make or break the relationship. Is this really the most important thing? And I'm like, no, right. Um, and but in the beginning, just to do it and see it to the end, despite all of those like obstacles, and knowing in my heart, knowing why I was doing it, like I was like, I've got to finish for me,
Yeah.
for me, right? Because you don't know what the future is going to hold. I was like, I've got to do it for me. But I knew at the end too, that second one, I was like, it's time to release this, because and the sad thing was, Mikey, I know people are going to be listening to this, they might and say, well, if they were arguing on that, there had to be a lot of other issues going on. And the reality is that was the only thing we were arguing on. Like that was the
So
conflict.
it's like, without this, so
Without
you
this,
have that on your conscience. Like, without this,
without this,
we're money.
like things are really great, right? when this enters the picture, it causes so much conflict.
So
And
how
so,
did you guys get, so once he said that,
mhm,
how did things go from there?
mhm.
And how did you guys get over this? I think, and also, I mean, have you been able to coach people with the same issues from this experience? I have to imagine this added to your arsenal of
Right,
coaching skills significantly.
right. Even just for people who are doing lifestyle, right? And now they're wearing a smaller dress size and they're wearing clothes, or they're wearing maybe more form-fitting things, or and like husband's like, whoa, what's going on, right? There's been clashes. I've had clients be like, man, my marriage is just really rocky right now. I'm changing. I still want to be with my spouse, but the dynamic is getting weird. Um, and one of the things with my husband that I had to do was that second time, right? Like I kept thinking like, well, one day it's going to click and I can just keep prepping. And then there was a point where I was like, even if I don't bodybuild, I can still take care of myself. I can still lift. I can still do all this without the bikini, without the shows. Right. So I was like, okay,
Yeah.
it's not like I'm giving that up. Right. If that was the conversation, like, don't exercise, don't do all that stuff, that would have been a totally different conversation. But it was also
Right.
too of, I have to accept that he might never change this vantage point. Like I have to go into it like he's never going to change his mind. And then what? Right. Um, and then also just like for me, it was like a self-sacrifice. It was an ego release of like, I, I can't do this to my partner anymore. Like at some point I was like, this is selfish on my end because I keep neglecting what he's saying, even though that's not the reason why I'm doing it. That's how it feels for him. And competing is not like
Yeah,
a life.
you said like the word that stood out to me was like the most powerful word was betrayal. And that's like
Right.
gut wrenching for a partner to hear.
Gut wrench. That's really hard because it's like, that's not what I'm,
Right.
it's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to betray you, sort of a thing. And so I've said to clients, like, include them in the process, right? Be open. Know that they might never change their mind. That's something you have to accept, right? We can't just assume.
Mhm.
And know when it's worth something. Like, do you want your marriage to possibly have discussions on divorce and not being together over this? Or are you so passionate about this and there's other things going on in the relationship where this is just the catalyst and you're like, you're ready for this to be done, right?
I've seen that. I've seen
Both.
people come out of prep and they come out single,
Yeah,
divorced. It does happen. So
it does
that's,
happen.
I mean, that, and it's
100%.
not too terribly uncommon.
Right, right. And then the other thing that my husband asked me to do after the second prep was he was like, he goes, not only does it hurt me for all the reasons why we've talked about, but he goes, I just need to know that you don't feel compelled to do this for an ulterior motive. And you know, with 100% certainty that bodybuilding is just like in your blood and veins, right? Like this is just how you rock and roll, sort of a thing. And so like I did, and I still do, because I love who I'm with, therapy on just like discussing that, like, is this like in my blood, right? Like I just live for this? Or as Cliff puts it, did bodybuilding choose me, right? And I just got entangled, right? And so I went through that process to where my therapist could say too, and say this to Adam, like, Janelle's in a really good place. This is who she is. Like there's no other motives or anything here going on. And like I put myself all into that process of that too. And it was really great to hear like someone else say, man, been working with her for a very long time. This is who she is. And
Mhm.
like perhaps any doubts that you have, you might want to investigate that, right? So having like a third person come in and just say like that
I
this is great.
I think therapy can be so helpful because so do you use therapy consistently? Is that in
Yes.
your arsenal that stays in?
Yep.
Cool. So I've used therapy many times. So
Mhm.
therapy For me, it's funny because therapy started off as something that I did not believe in because from a very young age,
Right.
my parents, I was a real troublemaker when I was a kid. And so
Mhm.
my parents would put me in therapy. Well,
Right.
therapy doesn't work if you don't want to be there. Therapy only works if you're there voluntarily. You can't force somebody to get therapy. So, like, for
No.
anyone listening, if you're gonna go into therapy, it is something you have to go into with an open mind and be willing to help yourself because it's like supplements. Like it's not, you don't just take it and it just works all of a sudden.
Not
It's
the
something you have
Matrix.
to. Yeah, right. Like it is something that takes work. I mean, self-improvement takes work, and there's homework involved, and there's perspective shifts involved, and there's, so you have to look at yourself through a different lens, and you have to be willing to um kind of do some things that you haven't really done before. And once I became an adult and I would go through, like, we'll say lows, certain lows, I've always gone back to therapy, and I've used it as a tool to get me out of a low, and I've found it very helpful. So whenever I go through, so I'm on medication, so I have severe depression. So basically what that is like every couple years something really bad will happen. I don't know, whatever, something will trigger it.
Yeah.
And it's the type of depression where, so when someone's like depressed, someone just says, I'm depressed.
Right.
They'll, I'm, I'm just depressed. That is not severe depression. And that's a
You can't
completely
function.
different, you cannot function.
Can't function.
No,
No.
well, I'll say that you can function. It's a nightmare. It is a living nightmare. It's the type of, it's it's dangerous. I'm saying it's dangerous. That's how bad it is. If you can't leave, it's something that's so bad that you can't not manage it. So if you have severe depression, you either learn to manage it or something bad happens.
Or you're not coming
So
out
you're
on
not
the other
coming out of it.
side.
You're not coming out
Yeah.
of it.
Really.
So from a very young age, I've been on medication, and I've tried to get off medication because I've always tried when things are so good. I'm like, I'm really good. I want to give this a shot. And I've never made it 6 months because it takes time for that to get out of your system. So how it happens is like a say like a bad breakup or a major shift in life happens, someone dies, whatever. These are the things that kind of bring it on, and I've gotten pretty good at digging myself out of these holes as I've gotten older. It doesn't happen often, maybe every couple of years, you never know.
Right.
But when I feel it, because there's no mistake in this, when this happens, I throw everything in the kitchen sink at it. So a lot of times, a medication either switch or adjustment has to happen. For example, if I remove medication, that's got to come back in.
Vacation has to be on.
It's got to come back in. Like that's
Right.
the main thing, because the medication allows you to tackle this like a normal person would.
It gives you that.
It takes about a month for
It's a
a
kick.
couple weeks to get the relief from the medication, but as soon as you feel it, the moment it happens, and it's almost like, oh, okay, like this isn't what I think. It's not that terrible. I can do this. It's like that. And then therapy. So bodybuilding, diet, I don't even mention that. Like a lot of times people will say like diet, all that. Bodybuilding, like you were saying, that's in my blood. That is going,
You're excited about it.
well, I will say during those times, I have to go do it. Like it's like I don't want to be here, but I don't have a choice. There's just no other choice. Like it's just what is. Like that, without that, I'm done. So I always like have to do that. And if you're in prep, like you don't want to be at the gym, it's very hard to be there and train, but you just go do that. But that always stays in. And then therapy is the other thing that I add in. And I've had a lot of success with therapy as this tool that I've
Yeah.
used to help me get,
Mhm.
journaling, but just getting that third person
Perspective.
objectivity. Like they don't know you. Like a lot of times they don't know you. And that is so helpful because
So
they
nice.
can give you different perspectives of things that you wouldn't get from like your brother or your mom or whatever. And to be honest, I would not feel good about giving my brother an ear beating for, 30 minutes when he's on his way home from work. That wouldn't feel good. You feel different when you're paying somebody to talk to them and
To
to
help you
to
out.
help you through that.
Right.
And so I've always been a big big proponent of therapy and all types of self-improvement. And even like I could tell you're really big on that because I mean, just look at what we're doing. Coaching mentorship, therapy. These are all things that most people don't do. These are all forms of self-improvement and just trying to get better in all areas of life. So I think that's really like really cool and really important. And I think it's really admirable that you use therapy.
Yeah. And after like you have to find the right person who specializes in what you're looking for
Mm-hmm.
too, right? So um
Kind of like a coach.
kind of like a coach, and she's been phenomenal ever since day one. And I love to like she has really taught me, I don't know, you've probably picked this up on different therapists too, like she's really taught me how to set a comfortable space for my clients to come as they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that, right? Like I love when a client messages me and they're like, I never feel any judgment from you. I feel like I can completely be myself and you're going to help me to the other side. Like, and I have my therapist to thank for that because she was just so, she's taught me so much, not just in helping me, but just watching how she facilitates things. I've just liked that. I've loved watching Cliff, and even just in the mentorship that we've had so far, like just the observing of things,
Mm-hmm.
the small things is like, wow, there's a lot of good stuff there.
Do you typically get along because you work with all women? Do you typically get along better with women or do you typically get along better with men?
Oh, I live with
It's a good question, right?
I live with two men. My I have we it's my husband and my brother-in-law. Um, I like both. I like I really though like I love working with women. I went to an all girls college, all that stuff. I love the care and compassion that women bring, but I just love hanging out with men in the sense of like they tell it as it is, they do something, they do it. Um, they're not afraid to joke around and just like say things as they are, right? Where like women might have a little bit more of a filter, and in some cases, that's very beneficial. And I also like how guys too are just like, this is me. Like I am who I am. And women are like trying to figure out where they fit in the puzzle piece of different
Mhm.
scenarios, where men are just like, I'm here, I'm showing up, this is me. And so I love that when I train with my brother-in-law, like I love how he's like, run faster. Like,
Do they lift? Do your husband and your brother-in-law do they lift and train?
yeah. So my
That's
husband has a
awesome.
coach and he bodybuilds now, and he has all the meals and the Tupperware, and
You're
he
who bodybuilds now?
my husband does.
Okay, so we got to talk about this shift, like, because this is incredible. So
Does
this
a big
story,
shift.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this story continues, and I'm
Right.
okay.
I saw him with Cliff's book on the nightstand. He was reading it.
The bodybuilding book.
Yes.
Oh, this is okay. So this has gone full circle.
Full
This
circle.
is okay. So how did that shift happen? How did he get in all of a sudden get into bodybuilding?
I think it was two things. And this was after like, right, we'd had this whole conversation where I'm like, I would give it up for you, right? I love you. Like, I don't want this to be the make it or break it deal. It's not worth it. I want you, right? And I said, like, he reads all these books on spirituality, theology, and he was doing a lot of study on the body and spirituality. And I think that's when things started to click, where he was like, wow, I see the body and like the dedication and the discipline, and like it clicked.
Mm-hmm.
It's the self-sacrifice, all that stuff, like it started clicking. And then it came up to like, hey, can I read your textbook or your textbooks? Sure. So he was reading through textbooks, and then, hey, you have a book by Cliff. And I was like, you know who Cliff Wilson? He's like, yeah, I've been listening to podcasts and he's been in there and been hearing his stance on that. And hey, have you heard this coaches roundtable? So like he just totally dove into it. And I
Started
think
soaking it up.
started soaking it up. And then he's like, just so you know, I hired a coach. And I was like, who's your coach? And he's been with this new coach, I don't know, maybe 4 months, and he's put on like 15 pounds of muscle.
This is I think this is so cool. And also, like, the key to longevity is building muscle. I mean, naturally, like, building muscle
Right.
and working out, there's nothing better for your health than that. So coming from a spiritual standpoint and the
Mhm.
importance of the human body, you are treating your body. Yes, temporarily you'll take it to the limit with some preps that, let's face it, that stuff to a certain point is definitely not healthy, but it's all
Yeah,
reversible, and
right.
when you come out of it, it's fine. So I mean, bodybuilding, one of the huge benefits of bodybuilding, I will say, because yeah, you do get these awesome health benefits, but I would still be doing it if you didn't. Like, the main reason I do bodybuilding is because I love bodybuilding.
Right.
It's just the amazing side effect is all of these amazing health benefits you get with it.
Right.
So I could see where that would spark his interest.
Yeah, definitely got interested in that. Like now he has like a meal prep bag that he takes to work, and he's got all the little Tupperware and
That's
he
so
does all that
cool.
stuff. And I'll be
How
like, what
much
about you
easier is it
today?
at home now, like with you guys doing that?
It's a lot easier, but it wasn't like something that was pushed, right? Like for him, he was like, just for me to say, like, I won't do it anymore. I mean, I'll still live the lifestyle, like the training and the food and stuff, but I won't do the shows. I'll give that up. I'll embrace this journey that you're asking me to go on because you care, right? Like I'll do all these things. And then just to see him like catch up, right? And then be like, he's throwing out names that he's like, have you ever heard of Jeff Nippard? Like, I really like his style of teaching and videos and the way he goes over information. I'm like, yes, I know who Jeff Nippard is. Like,
Unreal. Yeah, so something that's interesting about this, I'm not that surprised, and I'll tell you what. So, and I'm sure you can relate to this too. From a coaching standpoint, let's say I have a woman, and I'm coaching her, and she's really loving it, but her husband is not in the healthiest, and he's has his own bad habits, and she's doing her thing, and she wants him to join. I used to say yes, like, let's do this. Like, okay, you want to bring him on board? Let's do this. I
right,
stopped after a couple of years of doing that. I don't I will decline that, and I will let them know that I appreciate that, but if he doesn't want to do this for himself, then this won't last more than a month.
right,
And so what I tell the person to do, and this could be a guy, I just used a woman as an example, but this could be a husband wanting to get the wife on board. So what I'll say to do is I'll say, don't tell him about all this. Show him about all this. Well, how do I do that? It, sh- Show him the progress. Show him, oh, hey, look at this like new feature on my body that I've not seen before.
right,
I'm really excited about that. This feels so good.
right,
Oh, look at what I'm doing with this food. This is not difficult at all. I get to eat ice cream every night before bed. All I have to do is fit it into my macros that Mikey gave me. Wow, that's interesting. Look, so show, it's like a movie, like a good script in a movie.
mm,
Exposition doesn't work well. Okay, well, you just told me what happened. Don't tell me. That's just like, I could see the screenwriting right there. Show me by the actor performing an action,
right,
or an event happening, and then that led to this, and then this led to this. Show, don't tell. So I'll say that to my client, and over the course of, whether it be a couple weeks, couple months, whatever, however long it takes. Well, now it's the husband's idea. Now it's the wife's idea to
Yeah.
come and do this for themselves. And when it comes to diet and training, like, you can't do this stuff unless you want to do it. It's like therapy. Unless you want to be there, you cannot do it. It will not work. So that's the approach that I always take, is just show them how good this can be. Let them have the idea on their own and let them organically get into it. Like we were talking in the beginning, the best things happen organically. And then when they sign up, now they want to be here, and now we can be successful. And that always works. And so I'm not too surprised when you say that, okay, now all of a sudden he's getting into all this, and now he is like really excited by it. I think that's so cool.
Right. He's like, look at how much my body is changing, sort of thing. I'm like, now it's clicking, right? Of that.
Yeah.
Seen all that. And who knows, would that have changed earlier if I had released things earlier? I don't know. But all I can say is I'm thankful, right? Like, of just saying, I'll let it go. And then watching, like, God just bring it back, right? Of like, okay, if this is what, and I felt really led to do that, right? Like I was praying, I was thinking about all these things. I'm like, okay, it's time.
I think that's awesome. I think that's a great story. As soon as you said that, I was like, what? Okay, so this is
Plot
where
twist.
plot, yeah, plot twist.
At
This
the
is where it
end.
ends. So the other topic we want to talk about, and we kind of touched on it, is the over-sexualization of bodybuilding in general. And I kind of wanted to throw like gym culture in there too. So for you, just let's talk about personal experience first before like online, because online world is different than what is in real life. I don't care
Yeah.
what it is. Like, you ever notice, like, whether you're talking politics, whether you're talking about anything,
Right.
online here is just very loud, very in your face, very tumultuous. Everyone's fighting. But when you go out into the world, like, it's not like that. So like when I go to the gym,
Mm.
do you, I don't find like the over sexualization, like I don't see much of it in my day to day. Do you see that in your gyms, like where you're at? I mean, we're both Midwest people, so I mean, if we went to like a gym in California, it'd probably be very different. But do you see that, any of that in your day to day?
So I have multiple gym memberships. So I have like exclusive memberships. Like one of the gym memberships I have is like, it's a pure powerlifting gym. And the people that are there go there, like when I get dressed, I call myself like the fitness ninja. I have the black chucks, the black leggings, the black t-shirt, right?
Yeah.
I'm going there to train.
Yeah.
I have my little video tripod. I'm watching my lifts. Like I'm there because I want to work.
Yeah.
But then, like, if I'm just doing cardio, I have like a big box, like Planet Fitness membership, right? Because that gym is so close. I'm only doing cardio. It's
Yeah.
cold as heck outside. I'm not doing
Yeah.
outside.
Right.
And I'll be in the locker room, and the girls are like, at like where the phone is going down their shirt, and they're like
Wait,
putting
wait,
on
wait,
like,
wait.
makeup
This is interesting. So
and
you'll be in the locker room at Planet Fitness and you'll see girls taking selfies with the view so they can see down their shirts.
sort of a thing, and like the lipstick, and like they're like twisting their top in a certain
Sure.
way, and then they're going out on the gym, right? And they've got like the matching outfit. And I'm not throwing any hate at the matching outfits, because people are like, oh, she's against looking cute. No, 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 no. If that's your
Right, right, right.
personal style, I'm not throwing shade. But then they're not even training, right? They're
What's
just
going
like
on?
they're hanging out at the machines for 5 minutes and like watching other people or wanting to be watched. And then they'll do like one set of curls, and they may like one other thing, and then they'll talk to a guy on the floor, and then they'll go back to the locker room and take another picture, and then they'll come back. Like at that point, I'm like, you're taking pictures, but you're not really doing it, right?
Yeah. It's
When
more
I
of a social thing, like,
yeah,
and then like obviously like that sounds like Instagram behavior.
Instagram behavior. I'm like, when I leave, I smell bad, my hair is everywhere, my makeup's smeared,
Yeah.
and I'm really sore and I just want to eat.
Yeah.
There's no
Well, you're
thought of
training. Like that's training. Like you go there and you train. Like
right,
training and exercise are two different things, right? So,
right,
I mean, you're tracking your weights, you're pushing yourself, you're paying attention to activation and
right,
you're even putting music on to hype yourself up for, you're going to failure. So that's training, that's hypertrophy.
right.
There are some people that are just, this is fun. I mean, not that training's not fun, like, right? You love
Yeah.
that, but
Like,
it's more of like an extracurricular type thing.
right, where it's like maybe I'll meet somebody at the gym, where it's like maybe if I go to this restaurant or this bar, maybe I'll walk into somebody. Like I feel
Right.
like for some people, it's that sort of atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And then for them, okay, maybe it is more sexual because they're trying to pick up their next partner or they're trying to find the next love of their life or
It's
something.
like the gym
Hot,
mating call, right?
right? And like, you know, I was at the gym recently and I was working out and this guy's like, I know you from somewhere. And we got in a conversation and he got all nervous and flushed. He's like, oh yeah, you look amazing. And I was like, this poor guy is like, probably doesn't realize I'm married or something like
Was
that.
he so was he okay, so let's get into some like fun. We talked about some deep stuff. Let's talk about some fun. Like
Right.
let's okay. So have you ever had like a bad gym interaction or like do you have a story of like something that happened to you at the gym? Maybe someone came up to you, asked you out, maybe you got in an argument with something. Like has anything like really like like awkward or like has just anything like an argument, anything like that happened to you at a gym?
I've had a few. I was training at a bigger chain gym, and there was a guy that was working out, and he was taking like pictures of me on his phone. Like
You're
as I
kidding.
no, I like his phone's directly pointed at me, right? Like I can clear as day, like trying to get into frame. I'm like, that's creepy. Like
That's real bad.
that's creepy, right? I was like, so that creeped me out. I've also had somebody follow me out into the parking lot and like tried to see what car I was getting into. Like
Oh
that.
my god.
The last creepy thing that happened was I know we were talking about funny stories, but just like weird stories was I went to the gym and I put my keys on the counter because at that gym they had a bunch of dogs. And I'm a huge dog lover. And I have
Yeah.
this big dog, I'm petting it. I go into the locker room, right? I work out, I finish, I go out to my car. I'm like, I can't find my keys. I can't find them. My husband comes and picks me up. And now I'm paranoid because a lot of time goes by and I can't find my car keys. I'm like, was somebody trying to take my car? I'm like, that is the Midwest. Who's taking my car? Right. Like
Yeah.
you leave your keys at the door and nobody takes them for
You
weeks.
leave your
Leave a
door
coffee
unlocked
on the
too.
floor.
Yeah.
Right. And the gym owner called me. Well, actually, this was the weird part. I got on my Instagram stories and I said, if somebody is watching this and you have my keys, I want my keys back. You're making me feel uncomfortable. And so 30 minutes after I posted that story, Mikey, the gym owner calls me and he goes, you're not going to believe this. We found your keys.
They just showed back up.
They were found in a guy's bag. He was
Oh.
at the gym and he all of a sudden on the side of the gym dug into his bag and he pulled out the keys and he said, I wonder how these got in here. So I was like, did he take my keys or did someone put my keys in his bag? But then I also had these interactions, right, where like this random guy came up to me on the floor and he goes, how are you doing? And I was like, feeling kind of weird because my keys have been stolen. He goes, oh yeah, that type of stuff happens. Stuff comes up missing. He's like, there was a key go missing from the
Oh.
men's bathroom. And the whole time I'm sitting there and I'm like, is what is what is he
Yeah.
what I don't did he take my like I was like
That's
now
what it sounded like.
sounded weird. And he's like,
Yeah.
yeah, this went missing and I hope you find your keys. And I'm like,
He said all creepy like that.
yeah, it was weird. It was not a normal interaction where I was like, oh,
Your intuition told you that that was creepy. Like you got to
yeah,
follow your intuition. Like your intuition. Like I don't know about you, but when I when my intuition tells me something, At this point in my life, I listened. Like
Or you get a
it's
sensation.
never wrong.
And I just was like, how is it that I posted that story and like less than 30 minutes later, my keys are magically found at the
Yeah,
gym?
that's weird. That
So
is
weird.
so weird. I saw like I watch it's funny while I'm coaching, a lot of times I'll have true crime documentary stuff going on. I like true
That's
crime. Like
amazing.
I love it. And there was this time where this guy followed this girl. She there's footage of it on all the different cameras.
Oh my
They were
gosh.
like seeing each other and she broke up with him or whatever, and he started following her, followed her into the gym, and then they were like in like a posing room, like where she was doing like abs. He followed her in there, and you could see him following her, and he did follow her out of the gym, went up to her car, and he actually ended up killing her. So like, I mean, maybe a long time ago these things would seem like
Far-fetched.
okay, far-fetched, but they're not. Like this stuff
Right.
happens all the time, so like that type of stuff is so creepy.
Right. But like the guy who was like at the gym, he's like, "Oh no, you look really good." Like, but he was giggling, like you could tell he was nervous or something like that. I wasn't creeped out by that. I was like, "Oh,
Right.
this is just some guy that made was trying to make nice conversation." I didn't take it as like he's a weirdo
Right.
or something like that. I was like, if anything, I was
Yeah.
flattered. I was like, you know,
That's a nice way of putting it. Also, because like if a guy can't respectively go up to someone and ask them out or strike up conversation, then like where is it going to happen? So like if people
right.
react are very reactive, it depends how you approach somebody, right? Like if you come
Right.
up all these things happen like all creepy like that, then
No,
yeah,
that's
like
different.
yeah,
But
you're
this
gonna
guy was
get
nice,
right.
and
If
he was
someone's like genuine and nice and
genuine. Yeah,
yeah, you want to hear a funny gym story?
I'd love to.
So other than the gym that I'm at right now, let me think. Right, other than the gym there, I've gotten into it with someone at every gym I've ever been to. I don't know what it. No, I am. I think you could tell. Like I will be nice to anybody. I will not start shit with anybody. There's no reason for me to start shit with anybody.
Mhm.
People start shit with me though, and in all
Those
different in
those
all
crazy.
different ways. Yeah, and I won't back
Yeah.
down if somebody starts stuff with me. But like
Mhm.
whatever, like if you and me are complete strangers, well, we were complete strangers. So
Right.
this would happen no matter what. But if we were in person and you and
Mhm.
me were walking down a hall or whatever, I would look you directly in the eyes and I would smile and I would say hi. And it doesn't matter who you are. Like I'm
Right.
just that way. That's just the way either I was raised or whatever. I
It's a
maybe
Midwest
that
thing. We're just friendly. We are.
maybe
We're friendly.
unless you go like to the city. Although I don't know about that. Like I think that I don't feel that way that most people are like that. I don't know. I don't feel like the Midwest is particularly friendly.
Maybe it's
Um
just me because everywhere I go, people are like, "Hi." Like, I don't know.
yeah.
It's just my demeanor. I don't know.
Maybe it's you.
Maybe it's me.
Um but I was at this gym and this was in Austin, Texas. So I lived
Oh,
in Austin, Texas for a couple
for
of
the
years.
year. Yeah.
Yeah. And I went to a powerlifting gym, kind of like what you said. So it's real hardcore gym. They were hardcore. I mean, people were there to lift, as was I. I was prepping for a bodybuilding show and whatnot. I'm just being my usual self. So I walk and say hey or whatever, do my thing or whatever. It's not like I'm like, hey, blah, 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 trying to like stop and have a conversation with you, but I'll say hi or whatever. And I always have my headphones in like I do now. So I was walking and there was this girl
Mhm.
and her it was her boyfriend or whoever, the guy that she was with all the time.
Okay.
I don't know if it was her boyfriend. I just assumed it was her boyfriend. And I'm walking and they're lifters. I think she was a competitor. She looked like a competitor. And I'm walking and they're in a squat rack and I'm just walking over to the machines down the way. I smile, say hi, got my headphones in, and I'm walking. I didn't have any music in playing. My earpods were in like this, my earbuds, but there wasn't any music going. And I'm walking and I hear her go, God, he wants to be our friend so bad. It's just pathetic. I heard every word of it. And
Oh
I
no.
yes. And I stopped.
No.
I'm so glad I didn't have my music going, because normally I have my music going. Normally I have something going, but you know how sometimes, like, for whatever reason, you just have been
Oh,
training for a while, you just don't have anything going on, and they're just still in your head. So I stop, and I turn around, and I walk right over to her and her boyfriend, and I said, and she's looking at me like a deer in headlights, and I'm like, I promise you that's not the case. I said, I have a I have a really good group of friends. I'm not looking for any more friends. I said, just the way that I was raised, I'm friendly to everybody. I always say hi. That's kind of just a me thing. So I was just being friendly, but I promise I'm not like trying to be your friend. And she goes, she turned as red as a tomato. She turned bright red, and she goes, no, I was joking. And I'm like, and I looked at her boyfriend, and her boyfriend at this point was just like, yeah, I mean, what am I going to say? So I just turned around and I walked. And then I did a little bit of research. She was a coach. She was a coach, fitness competitor, the whole thing, motivation, positivity, all that stuff. So I just like embarrassed the shit out of her. And then, I mean, it was awkward after that, I think, but I always was like, I'm so glad that I had my headphones in when she said that. And, but then also kind of like, if you're going to be a coach, like if you're going to be a coach and you're going to be like a mentor and you're going to be like
mm.
motivational, I mean, if that is your personality in person, I don't think you're going to make it very long. And actually, I don't think she made it very long. I don't believe that she does it anymore, but yeah, I mean, that was just one experience.
Well, I mean, the gym is like any other place. You're going to get some fabulous people, right, that you meet and really connect with, or, just acquaintances. You see that person training. Like, there's this guy at our gym. I swear he's 7 feet tall, and he comes in and lifts. And I always know, I'm like, yeah, he's the tall guy. He comes in at this time, usually, like you see the regulars.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a couple people that come in there and you're like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. It's just one of the, gyms are, I mean, how long have you been going to gyms? Like, gyms are the weirdest atmospheres, every one of them. I don't care which one you go to.
And
They're
they
weird
break
atmospheres.
all the rules, all the
Yeah.
social rules,
Yes.
break all the social rules, right? All the social
Yeah.
rules.
What do you mean by that? Like, break all, like, people are just doing all of, like, breaking, like,
Well,
etiquette rules, or just what,
you're
in
like,
what way?
like you're even like locker rooms, right? I'm like, I'm in the shower, but someone else is in a shower next to me. And that whole thought
Yeah.
for me is like, okay, this is weird. And then you're
Yeah.
getting changed and you're like, you're in your zone, but you're like, man, I know somebody's like behind me and I don't have my clothes on, or like not all my clothes on. And they just walked into and then
Yeah.
it wouldn't be like somebody came over to my house and I'm sitting on my couch in my underwear or something like that. I'm like,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like it breaks so
And
many social rules.
you always have, like, no matter what gym you go to, and I don't care how long you've been going to them, like, you always are going to have, like, there's going to be guys doing weird stuff, there's going to be women doing weird stuff, there's going to be people yelling that are just like, look, if you can't pick up the weights, like, to get ready to do your set, and you're already screaming, like, don't get me wrong, grunting, there's a time and a place. You gotta grunt those last couple out, grunt them out. When you're yelling from your warm-up rep, you're just, we're acting a bit. So, like, you're dealing with that. You're dealing with people doing freaking somersaults in the air. Like, there's so much stuff going on, and it's a shared space. So everyone has to be respectful of everyone's preferences and lifestyles and what they're working on. And you're sharing a space, but
Right.
you will always have these people that are doing, like, like you said, pushing the boundaries and breaking some rules.
Breaking some rules. Yeah, it is such a unique place to be,
It
right?
is.
Then each
It
gym
is.
has their own feel and like own groups, and sometimes there's cliques, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like people in the serious gyms are like sizing each other up, like, I wonder what show they're doing or what lift they're gonna go into
Yeah.
competition, or Yeah.
So
So
are you going to compete? Like, are you thinking about competing in the next couple years, or how's that looking? And is your husband going to compete too, or how's that working?
I think we've talked about a couple's photo shoot, so that might be fun first, right? Like where
Hmm.
we cut down and we're not like show lean, but we're
Sure.
lean. Just as kind of like a fun thing. I
That's
would
also great practice for someone who hasn't like done that before.
done that before, right? I mean, he's definitely an ecto. Like if we were going to use that sort of a thing, I mean, but he's got a little bit of meso in him, and because he's more of a novice in some senses, like he's progressing quite quickly. I'm like, it always feels like because each week he's like, added more, added more, added more. I'm like, that's great.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a beautiful time.
I know, and he's enjoying every
Yeah,
moment of it. And I'm
it's
like,
so cool.
just
Yeah.
live it up, man.
Mm.
Live it up. I'd love to do another show. And like we were talking earlier, like having Cliff walk me through that, I would just be super honored. I want to make sure I'm in a place though that when I go back at 5'8.5", I have something to show,
Sure. Yeah.
right? And just take that time. So like year and a half, even 2 years, like, but just really focus on developing my physique more, but also too, like in terms of coaching, like I want to accelerate more there. I want to take more courses. I want to do more things. And it's usually best to do that with a full brain versus
Yeah. And
prep
there
brain.
and a full tank of gas. I mean,
Yeah,
to prep, you have to have all of these things in order, and then the muscle. So there's no rush. Like those off seasons, that's where the magic happens. I mean, that is where the people that compete back to back too soon, they don't really improve. And oftentimes they get worse because they lose muscle. And so it just there I think that's a really smart strategic approach to take,
yeah.
where you're making sure like it's
Mm.
okay to gain this weight.
Yes,
It's, right now is the time to gain. This is where the muscle is built. This is where you lay the foundation. That way, when you cut, you have that muscle to show. And I think especially for not that men don't have this problem too. Men do have a problem gaining weight, but women in particular look at weight just from society as like, there's so much importance placed on that number, when that number going up that is exactly what you need for this time.
exactly. Right. Like you can't build anything out of nothing. And I still
Mm-hmm.
like before my next show, like I still have some athletic goals. Like I really want to run a marathon. That's like a goal of mine. And with all the surplus of food and all the stuff in the gym, like I want to push myself in other ways too. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just like solely body. Like I think when you do this, like you're attracted to trying different things too. Like I want to improve on that. I want like more endurance. And you can't do everything all at once. You have to
Right.
dedicate to one thing. Like people are like, I want to be great at stretching and really fast and put on 10 pounds. I'm like, you can do
Yeah.
those things, but like you need to pick a swim lane and dedicate for a bit and then, you know, keep going.
You can't be the best at both when it comes to that, but also like diversity is important. And I think if you're just consumed with bodybuilding, that's not going to make you great at bodybuilding. You need to keep your mind occupied. Like when
Yeah.
oddly enough, when I'm not like, I don't think about bodybuilding. Like bodybuilding is just,
You.
it is. And I think about work. I think about family, think about dubstep. I think about all of these other things. Bodybuilding is just an action. So it's like I'm training.
Yeah.
Okay, I've trained. We don't have to overthink that. Here's my sets. Here's my reps. Here's what I did last week. Okay, like that. What am I gonna What am I gonna do after that? Okay, food. The food's up plugged into my fitness pal. I weigh it on my food scale. I eat it. What am I going to do after that? Just sit here and think about like okay, now we're digesting. Okay, this is digesting. This is going to turn into glycogen. Like that. Doing other stuff is, you have to keep busy doing other stuff, because if you start thinking about this stuff, what tends to happen is if someone their identity becomes bodybuilding, and that's not a good thing, and you'll obsess on it and become like, okay, this rep didn't go exactly as planned. What does that mean about me as a person? Okay, there is such a thing as too much thought.
Totally. Too much.
And that can cause you to be ironically, stress, anxiety, overthinking can cause you to become a worse bodybuilder, athlete. We're just talking about bodybuilding, but whatever it is, I think it's important to have other passions, interests, and things outside of bodybuilding. So I think that's really cool that you have. It sounds like you got plenty going on.
There's enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Janelle, I'm really happy we got a chance to have a conversation.
Same.
I think we could talk for hours about anything, but I am going to have your social media links and everything here. Is there anything you want to promote? Where can the people find you? And do you have anything coming out that they should be on the lookout for?
I don't have anything coming out right now. Just happy to be with Cliff in the mentorship program. It's very exciting. But they can find me at Janelle Marks on Instagram. Okay. You can always send me a DM, ask a question. But a lot of my time I'm with my clients, right? So it's like, that's really where I'm at. I'm working. So
yeah, absolutely. And we'll have to do this again. I think that we have a lot that we can talk about. I'm really, really happy that we connected in our space, because from everything that I know about you and everything that I've seen, you just seem like a great person. And one of the nice things about this is I get to choose who I want to talk to. So I'm only talking to people that I want to talk to. So I do appreciate you coming on, and I do encourage everyone to go follow Janelle. She's in her stories. You're always providing value there, and you do put a lot of thought into this value that you provide. And you can also reach out to her for coaching, and I will include all that information as well.
Thank you so much, Mikey. This has been a pleasure.
Yeah, you're welcome. And then I will see you really soon for mentorship. I'll see you guys.
We got to get the homework done.
Yeah, you and I got to go. We got homework.
We got to do our homework. So.
All right, Janelle. We'll talk soon.
Mikey. Bye.